for me, when you work with issues and are constantly battling problems and always looking at your existence as a problem or from a problematic point of view, and this also comes areas as racism and discrimination and minority rules and disregard for minorities in these white majority countries. It breaks down many of us, also affects a lot of our mental health. So we are many people in these countries, in these white majority societies, that suffer from mental health issues in different ways.
Welcome family and welcome back. If it's your second time here or several times, you've been with us several times. This is Edges and Drinks TV and I'm your host Miriam Nabunya. We've started a segment where we want to amplify and spotlight Afro-Nordic females that are changing the narrative. And we're sitting right here in a beautiful home in Malmö, Sweden, just about to talk to our very first guest. Our guest is an artist that's been through different avenues in the big landscape of artistry. But throughout her career, she's also worked with different policy issues such as international migrations and ethnic relations. Before I deep dive into why we wanted this guest here, I want you to meet her. Her name is Sarah Nakiito, and before we go deeper, I have to say that Sarah Nakiito is also my big sister. So I'm going to try to keep this interview, this talk, as non-biased as possible. Sarah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're sitting here in your lovely home, and it's a very colorful ambience, I have to say. Have you always been a colorful person?
I've always loved colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a home should reflect your personality or your hobbies or the things that you love. I spend a lot of time in my home. I work from home and I've been working from home for the last 10 years maybe. So I spend a lot of time here. So how it looks like really affects how my days are.
And I also have to say that if I didn't know this was your home, but I've been following your the different types of arts that you work with, art forms that you work with, I could really guess that this is your home. I have to say it's really nice, and thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here.
Leading up to this session, and where I myself and my team sent an email to Sarah and asked her to be part of this segment, Sarah asked me that am I sure that she's the right person for this segment? Why was that?
Because I am not the I work a lot and I've worked with so many different things through the years. I started working since when I was 16. So I've been on my own since then, and I've been providing for myself since then. So I've done a lot in my work life, but I'm also not a person that is very out much on social media or talk a lot about myself and my work. So that's why I thought maybe I wouldn't be the right person who is really good at promoting themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although you're an artist, you're a quite private person.
Mm.
Has it always been that way?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
My work life, or?
To understand, for those at home watching now that don't know Sarah Nakiito, maybe heard of like DJ Negritude, or had your name pop up within different projects and theater setups and so on, but they don't know you. So if you would like somebody to know as private as you are, what would you say about your background, and then we can walk into your work?
Well, it's been 40 years, so I'll try to do it as swiftly as possible. We came to Sweden in 93. A lot happens when you are young that you don't understand, and you are always in the mercy of adults, and this mercy of adults can usually be abused, where children don't have power and agency of their lives. It's really up to the adults around them to make sure that they are safe or act in their best interest. I felt that we didn't have that, and I needed to understand what happened when we came to Sweden and how the migration process worked, because we came as refugees, and a lot of things were, decisions were made for us. So I needed to understand that. So when it was time for me to apply for university, I applied for a program here at Malmö University that is called International Migration and Ethnic Relations, that goes through Swedish migration policies, but also European migratory processes, colonialism, and the different consequences of which Black and brown people end up here in the global north. So I focused a good 15 years of my adult life trying to understand those processes, both for myself and for others. So I've also worked for many years with refugees in different ways, visited different refugee camps and worked in refugee camps. I traveled a lot in the East Africa and East African community, which is like a political region in East Africa that involves Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, who also deal with a lot of like the repatriation from the war in Rwanda, and the headquarters in Arusha, where I was to do my field studies. Visited the Red Cross refugee camps, and also worked a little bit with the UNHCR in Kenya. So it's all connected, and although despite of what many white people might think of refugees being here, most of the world's refugees are not in Europe. We are a very, very, very small minority that come all this way. Sweden is very far up on the world map. And it's a long travel from Uganda to Sweden, so we are very few Ugandans here. Most refugees are not in Europe. Most refugees are around the countries or internally displaced in their own home countries. So I needed to understand those processes and focused a lot of my life on that, and worked with rehabilitation for people that had come here and needed resettlement in Sweden. So that is a big part of my background.
Your academic background.
My academic background, but also my work background, until about 8-9 years ago. Something happened.
Something happened. And before we get to that something, growing up with you as a big sister, I've always observed you as a deep individual. And that reflects a lot on what you just shared with us here, that you wanted to understand a sense of our journey, a sense of why do we live where we live, and how did it come about for us to get there.
And also the conditions of living here, what we are, different states of being as a Black and brown person in these countries. It's part of it.
It is. And also your studies, when I was researching for our session, and I stumbled upon that your studies, your major in international migration and ethnic relations in Malmö University, it said that you focused a lot within the areas of Pan Africanism, colonialism, and also the Negritude movement. Can you please help us and me to understand that a little bit better. Like we can start with like the Negritude movement. Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Well, I can try to do it fast, but it's I don't think we have enough time for it. The Negritude movement was an intellectual movement that happened in France in the beginning of the century, the 19th century, where intellectuals, writers, thinkers, philosophers from the colonies, because all islands in the Caribbean and what was called the West Indies, but also Africa was still under colonial rule. So the few black people, and especially from these francophone areas that came to France, they organized and created an intellectual movement called the Negritude movement. Yes, that is the short version of it.
Okay, no, but that's really good because it feels like, at least for me, I don't know how you feel, but at least for me, it's scratching a little bit of curiosity, and thank you for that. And then I'm thinking, a lot of us, and when I say us, black and brown people, in this society, in the Nordics, many of us resonate or associate ourselves as Pan-Africans. So with the combination of Pan-Africanism and colonialism, and then now you just explained the Negritude movement, how does colonialism and Pan-Africanism play in your studies, and why did you choose those?
They're all connected, right? I mean, it's all... The Negritude movement was quite early, where our countries and the lands where we come from were still under colonial rule. Pan-Africanism was a response from what, during the 60s in Africa, where most countries got or fought for and died for independence as it is now, although we are still under a lot of colonial rules, but the independence from the colonizers, which in Africa was mostly Great Britain and France. Some countries that were ruled by Portugal. Spain didn't have so many colonies. Germany lost their colonies after the Second World War. They had two. So in this independence movement, there was also a need for these different African lands to organize to better fight colonial powers. And this all was like what we'll call like the founding fathers. We have Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, we have Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, Gaddafi, of course, in Nigeria. They were all very much working together during the 60s to form policies and also an army, like a unified army, which is now the African Union, to better fight and better resist Europe and European imperialism. So Pan-Africanism comes from that. And in this movement, we also had a lot of intellectuals. We had writers, we had artists, we have I mean, one of Africa's biggest artists, the Nigerian performer, a lot of these artists that after the 60s and 70s could now come to Europe and perform here. They were also working politically to tell Europeans what is happening in Africa. So a lot of the apartheid movement was artists coming here in Europe, telling them what is happening back home. And that's how Sweden and Olof Palme became very involved, for example, in South Africa. So it was a movement, and a lot of politics has been fought from different fronts by Africans, and many of them have been fought here in Europe. And then taking back information and power and help back home.
Proving my observations as I grew up as a very deep individual, knowing all of this, because you didn't only study it and be part of different publications around those issues, and you worked with this for 15 years or so. What did it do to you as a Ugandan Swede in this society where you know more than the average Swede? I'm not even going to say Afro Swedes, but the average Swede about these kind of issues. What did that do to you as a member of society?
I can say for certain that I know more about colonialism than most Swedes. So we don't need to beat around the bush on that. I'm very sure that I know more. Um, for, for me, when you work with issues and are constantly battling problems and always looking at your existence as a problem or from a problematic point of view, and this also comes areas as racism and discrimination and minority rules and disregard for minorities in these white majority countries. It breaks down many of us, also affects a lot of our mental health. So we are many people in these countries, in these white majority societies, that suffer from mental health issues in different ways, and also in ways where we many times don't even have words for it, because living here is hard. It is tough. Life is hard in Europe as a black person. And it's very much about survival. And when you spend so much time of your life trying to survive, that breaks you down. In my case, I got burned out from working with crisis all the time and working with people in crisis. So that's what happened to me. I got burned down and I became really sick. I was at home in bed for about 3 years from that.
Thank you for sharing that. And something that many people don't know is that before working with these issues, before following your curiosity of your life and our life here in Sweden, you were a dancer. And this is what I meant as we started out in this segment, where I said that you've been in the environment of art for greater parts of your life. And then you came into this area of working with these heavy issues. And then you got burned out. And what happened after those 3 years?
For me, it's all connected. Becoming a dancer was also a kind of survival. We were in an environment that wasn't good for me, at least. I had to leave that environment. The easiest way for me was to do something outside of that, and that is how dance came in. I chose a program in Uppsala that would get me out of the situation where we were. So art is also, I'm really constantly working with the same issues. It's just, I'm just doing it in different ways, but it's always the same background of being a black person in this country. So we are always dealing with racism and discrimination, and this goes well with art. I stopped being a dancer for this reason. The dance world is highly racist. I'm hoping that it's better now, but when I used to dance, I was a contemporary dancer. I don't know how many times I got told how my body was wrong, how I was too big to dance. I was not big. You couldn't be a professional dancer at that time in that field when you are big.
And a side note to that was, I remember in high school, we, and when I say we, our family got notice from the school nurse that they thought you were undernourished. And when you started dancing was just after high school. So the fact that when you got into that environment, then you were too big. But when you were in the environment of your peers,
they thought I was too
little, too slim.
So yes, so that's dance. I love dance, and I love to articulate myself in dance or in arts. But and I'm really grateful for this, that I saw that so early, and left the dance world at a quite early age. I was about 23, I think, when I stopped dancing. Because I thought if this is what the dance world is requiring of me to be a professional dancer, then this is not my area. Then I'm not going to do this, because I'm not going to give I'm not going to give away more of myself and put my body through that, because it's not worth it for me. And that's how I stopped dancing and started university and studied these issues, and I did that for 15 years. And then I got burned out. Being burned out because I had worked with rehabilitation some years, which led to my burnout. I also knew how the rehabilitation process looked like in Sweden, because I worked with them. I knew which agencies that were involved, and I knew how the curriculum could look like. So for me, I knew that I didn't want to follow that, and I couldn't follow that, because that I noticed in my work that what the government thinks is rehabilitation isn't always what the people need as rehabilitation. So I formed my own plan, and one of those, I moved to an area here in Malmö where we had a building where those of us who lived in the building were also run the building. And in that area there were several empty business spaces. So I contacted our landlord and told them there's an empty space here and it has been empty for about 3 years. Let me use it. Please give it to me for this couple of months and see what I can do. I can involve people here. There are several women in my situation just in this area. There are a lot of newcomers that are in the apartments, that are on programs that are not beneficial for them. We need a space where we can meet and just somewhere we can just get out of our houses.
So you created a safe space.
I tried to do that, and it was
art as a tool.
With art as a tool, and with no expectations at all, because I was still in my rehabilitation, so I was not well at all. So many times I could tell people, I have the key, I will open the space for her, but I need to be in bed today. But you are welcome to be here. You can make coffee if you want. Let me know when you want to leave so I can come and lock the space up. And it quickly became like a community center where people gathered, and mostly women and children, and immigrant women and children who gathered there. And after a while, when I was getting better and I started to talk more to these women, and we started sharing things about our lives, a lot of us immigrants who come here, we are people that have had occupations and professional work lives and have so much knowledge that is wasted here or not taken advantage of in these countries. And that's how I noticed a lot of these people. I met a Somali woman who had worked as with pottery and pottery making in her country. So she did a pottery workshop where I could borrow equipment and invite everyone in. It was free for everyone to do. There was a woman from Pakistan who used to talk a lot about, she was a really great belly dancer in her youth. She was maybe in her 60s now. So she did a belly dancing workshop. So it became a space where we could just come and enjoy ourselves for a couple of hours a day, meet other people. If you don't want to talk, you don't have to. If you just want to crash here a little bit before going home and looking after your kids or your husband, you could do that as like a breathing hole. So that became my rehabilitation and a way to like re-entry society.